Hello, welcome to LoveSeenHeard. This is your host, Dee Dee Star, and let's get into the documentary about Gary Coleman. If you're like me and you're either a child of the 80s or you were grown in the 80s, whichever was the case, you know about Gary Coleman. This documentary was very interesting. So let's get into it. But first, let me play my intro. Hello and welcome as we talk about the documentary of Gary Coleman on Peacock, and it's called Gary. Now, before I get started, I do have to say that everything that's mentioned here is alleged and in my opinion, and all of these topics are for fair use, for entertainment, for instruction, educational purposes, according to the Act of 1976 107. So, and I also have it scrolling on my banner. So let's get into it because this was kind of a nostalgia moment for me, thinking about Gary Coleman and thinking about my childhood. For those who know, he was a child actor on Different Strokes, very popular child actor, might I add. So we watched him grow up, basically. And for me, he was born in 1968. February of 1968. I was born in 73, so it wasn't that far apart in age. So I feel like I really did grow up with him until his untimely unaliving. And we'll get to that, as we talk about it. So, first of all, in this documentary, they had a few of the people who were close to him throughout his life. So, first of all, there was his ex wife. Her name was Shannon Price. He had a friend named Dion Miel. I'm hoping I'm saying his name correctly. He also had another female acquaintance, and she doesn't come in till later on in the documentary. And I think her name was Anna. Also, his parents were a part of the documentary. So it was very interesting, as well as a couple of his agents and lawyers. So we'll get into all of that. So, first of all, um, the documentary came on Peacock on August 9th, 2024. And so it basically starts off with different kind of trailers of his life, as you will, showing like, his different TV appearances. It showed like some movies he was in. Then it did kind of get you into some of the things that people were saying about him. And I took this one quote down that he said that really struck me. He said, "Celebrity is always a burden. You're stuck with it for life. You will die a celebrity." And that really struck me, especially after seeing this documentary about him and what he went through. So let's get into it. So it starts off with the ex-wife, Shannon Price, and she's talking about the day when he had his untimely demise and that she called 911 and they played a snippet of the 911 call. So, at first looking at her scene at the beginning, I didn't really think anything about it. Cause to be honest, at that time when this happened, I wasn't really, following him at that time. I knew he had passed away, but I really didn't know what happened. And I don't remember seeing all of the news outlets talking about it, or maybe they did and I just don't remember. But hey, life be life, and sometimes we miss things. So that's why this was so interesting when I came across this tonight. So she basically was talking about the first time she met him was on a movie that he did, and he invited her into the movie set and basically let her know that if someone asked her anything, let them know that Gary Coleman let her in. So that was kind of like their initial meeting. She talked about going to his hotel, and this was in Utah where he was filming a movie. And I'll go back and get the name of the movie because I did not write that down. But also, she talked about going back to his hotel that he was staying in, and he brought her Olive Garden takeout, and they talked and talked and talked. Um, and really got to know each other. So shortly after that, they became an item. So it kind of goes from there. So then it talks, it brings up his mom, who is Sue Coleman, and she's talked about how he's always been an entertainer. Even as a young child, he was an entertainer. Everything he did, he always was wanting to make people laugh and entertain them. So then it also brought in one of his first agents that he had, which was Victor Perillo, and he actually met him at age 8. So they were from Chicago. Okay. So he wrote a letter to some type of store, department store, because he heard that they were going to use children models to model clothes, and he wanted to be a part of it. So he wrote his own letter asking could he model. And they said sure. He got into modeling for that clothing store, if I'm not mistaken. And then someone gave them the card for this agent, Victor Perillo. So as I said before, he met him, he was 8 years old. So this was very early on in Gary Coleman's life. So when one of his first jobs that he was able to land was a commercial called Harris Bank commercial, and they show the commercial, and he was cute as a button. Anybody who remember Gary, he was a cute little boy because he had those fat chubby cheeks. And at that time, as far as I'm concerned, I was young just like him. So that's all I knew of him was he was a little cute guy with chubby cheeks, and he was funny. I never really understood everything that went along with his look, and we'll get into that further a little later. So it gets into the fact that he began to make these different appearances on different shows like Good Times, and then which started all this started in 1978. Norman Lear, most of you all have heard of him. He has since passed. He was a big executive producer. He was a creator, director. He was behind all of the great TV shows that we love today. Some of the shows were like Good Times, The Jeffersons, Different Strokes, which Gary Coleman ended up being on. He was also a part of Archie Bunker. I mean, it was a number of shows that he had his hands in. So he was a great creator at that time, and he came up with a lot of the shows that we now know and love. I don't know if Sanford and Son is one of them. I believe so, but not sure. So yes, Norman Lear was the man at that time. So he was he met Gary Coleman and started putting him and making appearances on different shows that he already had in the works. And then he came up with the show of a different world. I'm sorry, I'm saying a different world. Must be on my brain. I love that show too. But he came up with different strokes in 1978. So then Tom Todd Bridges makes an appearance. Todd Bridges played the character of Willis on Different Strokes, and he played that character alongside with um, Gary Coleman, who played Arnold, which was supposedly his little brother. And the premise of the show, if you didn't watch it or you're too young or you don't remember it, the premise of the show was a rich white guy adopt two black children who were in need. And he also had a daughter, and they lived in this mansion basically. So he upgraded their life from being in foster care on the streets. He took them in, and he wanted to give them the life that he knew of as growing up with his family. So think about the time period of the 70s. This was not a popular concept. Nowadays, we see a lot of that, and it's so interesting how Norman Lear was really ahead of his time, because now we can see on any given day a white family adopting black children. But at that time, that was not heard of, and especially to be on a television show for all the world to see. So he was a really an innovator of his time. And so a lot of people had concern about the show. There was people who did not like the show. They thought that that was not a good look for upper class white people at the time. Or, some of the black people felt like, it wasn't good for a savior type individual to come in and rescue black children. So people had all of their different views and opinions at that time. But we got to think about the time period. It was 1978. So we have grown a lot since then, but we still have a ways to go. So I thought that was very interesting. So Todd Bridges talked about how his friendship was with Gary Coleman and how they really was close on the set. They really kind of grew up with each other. He said at the time he was 13 and Gary Coleman was like 10. So they were in the same age range where they were still playing, and he said they would do different projects on the set and build things, normal kid, little boy stuff. So I thought that was pretty good. Now he also had another friend named Dion Meow, and that's who I talked about a little earlier. And basically, they showed him in his garage, and he showed all of the memorabilia that he had collected over the years of Gary Coleman. And so he talked about how they met. His mom was, I want to say, an executor or something like that, and I didn't write it down. I do apologize for that. But his mom was something in the business, and she was going on the show of Different Strokes and asked him, did he want to come along? He said yes. He said at the time he was 14 and Gary Coleman was 10, and they instantly became friends from that point forward. So then they showed some of the behind the scenes footage of Todd Bridges and Gary Coleman doing things on the set along with Dana Plato. So that was really interesting too. Like I said, this was nostalgia for me. It took me back to my childhood because I used to love watching Different Strokes. So then, he coined the phrase, "What you talking about, Willis? What you talking about, Willis? What you talking about, Willis?" Or he used to say, "What you talking about, Mr. Oh, what was his name? I'll think of his name in a minute, the daddy." But he used to say it to everybody. But really, the main times that he said it, it was, "What you talking about, Willis?" That was his catchphrase. And they said basically he came up with that himself. At that young age, he was just very creative, very energetic, and they asked him how did how does he know how to act? Because he didn't have any training or anything. He just act. And he said basically, I do what they tell me to do. If they tell me to cry, I cry. If they tell me to laugh, I laugh. Basically, that was what he did. So I thought that was pretty cool. And something Todd Bridges said was that he always was fascinated by Gary Coleman because the way he would talk was as if he was an adult. So he would say these phrases and sayings as if he was an adult. And so he thought that was kind of funny coming from a little guy like Gary Coleman. So it's mentioned that he ended up playing in, I think, about 6 movies and 3 feature films. And matter of fact, I'm going to pull that up because I do have some of that information to share. So let me move my background. So as you can see here, he did have a nice little catalog, more than I thought. So first it was 1978 to 1986. He was in Different Strokes. Then he had the cartoon, and I forgot about the Gary Coleman cartoon. That was in 1982. He was in a movie called Playing with Fire in 1985. He did a few cameos on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air from 1990 to 1996. He also was in a movie called The Kid with the Broken Halo. I remember that movie too. That was in 1982. He did On the Right Track in 1981, Church Ball in 2006. And then I don't know why they didn't. Well, they have it. I have it listed as most popular first, so I probably should have put them in order of the dates. But oh well. Then he was on Silver Spoons from 1982 to 1987. He also did a movie in 2008 called Midgets and Mascots. He did a behind the scene, unauthorized story of the Different Strokes. Then he did this one. I'm not sure what this is, but it said the Gary I knew. So I guess it was kind of like a documentary that someone did of him, and it doesn't have the date on it. Then this was a movie he did in 1983, The Kid with the 200 IQ. Dickie Roberts, former child star, he did that in 2003. He played in Dirty Work in 2098. Jimmy the Kid in 2000, I'm sorry, in 1982. He did Scooby Doo, Night of the Living Dude, 2001. I don't even remember that one. The Kid from Left Field, 1979. Scouts Honor in 1980. A Carol Christmas, 2003. He did Married with Children from 1987 to 1997. So he did appearances there. He also played in Buck Rogers in 1979, and that was interesting that he got that role. It was because he always looked at the stars and he always imagined himself in space, and he drew a lot of rocket ships and different things. So his agent told the cast of Buck Rogers that he really needed to be on that show, and so they invited him as a cameo in that Buck Rogers movie. 1984, um, he played in The Fantastic World of DC Collins. 1977, he was in Little Rascals. 1978, America Tonight. He was on that. Frank McCluskey, I don't remember this, but it was 2002. They got him as playing in Tupac Resurrection. I need to go back and watch that because I don't remember him being in that, but that was 2003. Wayne Head from 1980. 1996 to 97, American Carol, 2008, sorry. Um, Gary Coleman for Safety's Sake, not sure when that was. Save Virgil, 2004. He did a lot more than I even remember. Then he did, sorry, it went a little too fast. A Christmas Too Many in 2007. Like Father, Like Santa in 1998. Curse of the Monkey Island, SFW 2009. I'm sorry, 1994. I don't remember that. The Great Book Howard in 2008. So a lot of these he just kind of did appearances. Like he didn't have a full role in a lot of these, but he did do appearances here and there. Homeboys in Outer Space from 1996 to 97. Baby Bob 2002 to 2003. The Rerun Show 2002. Syndrome 2014, The Menu of the Last Days of Chesins, sorry. That was in 1997, 50 Greatest Comedy Catchphrases. And of course, it would have been, what you talking about, Willis? You know, that was his catchphrase. Lucy Moves to the NBC. He did an appearance there. Fox Hunt in 1996. Moby, we Are Made of Stars. And some of these don't have actual dates to them. But as you can see, he did have many roles throughout his life, of different things. So I was really kind of, I didn't know it basically. I didn't realize that he played in so many different things over the years because, like I said, once I grew up, I feel like we grew up together, but then, I kind of not forgot about him, but I didn't really see much of Gary Coleman in my adult years. So, just to be honest. So, I thought that was interesting, all the things that I found on the Google that he had actually been in. So, going back to the documentary, his mother and his father, they basically talked about his kidney disease. So, they said at 2 years old is when he was diagnosed with the kidney defect. And then at 5, he was able to have his first kidney transplant. So his dad, which is Willie Coleman, talked about that and how, they were devastated, and they basically shared how they felt about learning this about their son. Now, his friend Dion talked about why his size was the way it was. And he said basically because of the transplant, and anybody who knows about any type of transplant you get, they put you on all of these medications that you have to take for the rest of your life in order to help you to your body to accept the transplant and in hopes of it not rejecting or that the organ doesn't fail. So, with that being said, he had to take immune suppressants medication because of the transplant. And they basically said that he may not live past 12 years old. And if he does, he'll probably need another transplant. So his friend basically was saying he never knew how it felt to be healthy. And I thought about that as I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, you don't really take into account other people's lives sometimes. I always say we take a lot for granted. We wake up every day, we're able to breathe air without thinking about it. A lot of us have all the nourishments we need. Our bodies function great. So you really don't always take into account what other people have to suffer through. So I thought that was a profound statement when he said that he never knew how it felt to be healthy. That's just amazing to me because I don't I can't really say that I've ever felt like that in my whole entire life. And we see this started with him at 2 years old. However, to see him, he didn't allow that to stump his growth as far as a person and personality to some degree, and we'll get into it further what I mean by that. So then it talks about it went back to his ex-wife, and she talked about how, when they got together, he treated her like a queen, and he was what she really needed at the time because she lost her mom at a very young age. And so the first thing that went off in my mind was, and I'll tell you more about it as we get through it, they trauma bonded. They trauma bonded. And because of his story and her story, and that was just and that's my opinion, allegedly, that when she got a chance to be with him at this point in her life, because she mentioned that she needed his love, she needed him or something like that. And he took great care of her. But also to know she was very young at the time. So this was in, I think, 2006, 2007. He was already good and grown. Okay. So she was only like in her 20s. So just to give you a little something to keep in your mind as we go through the documentary, because I thought that was interesting too. So then he got another agent when he was in Utah, because that's where he ended up living at the end of his life. And he had another agent named Sheila Rose, and she said that he just wanted someone to love him, and she just wanted love. So, of course, it went off in my mind again. They trauma bonded. That's what it seemed like to me. So it was very interesting. So then going back more about the documentary, 1983, Gary was about 15. This is when he got a team, okay, behind him, a full team. So his parents became his managers. And, they talked to one of the hairstylists. Her name was Joy or Joyce. And she talked about how they didn't want his dad, Willie, at the set because at this point, so think about it, from 78 to 83, now Gary Coleman is popular. He's making money. He's doing some things. And as we saw his catalog of things he was appearing in or movies he made, he was making pretty good money at the time and he was doing pretty well. So his parents became his managers. And also he had a business manager, and I failed to write her name down, but they kept showing her throughout the documentary. So the hairstylist Joy talked about how nobody liked Willie, which Willie Coleman, his father, at all. They did not want him on the set because he basically let it be known that Gary is the star of the show. So then they shows Willie coming back in, and he said, to my knowledge, he was the star of the show. And they're a lot older now. And so, well, as I get into it, I'll talk about it because I have so many thoughts about what I saw and the what it appeared to be at the time when I was young, hearing about the story of his parents and everything. And now what I'm thinking about as being an adult, going through things in my own life and seeing the parents as human. And, it's just a lot behind it. And as we always can say, two things can be true at once. So we'll get into that too as well. Because they really did a good job of telling a lot of the behind the scenes story before they got into all the bad stuff that happened. So also the stylist mentioned that once Gary told her that he was gonna slap her. I was like, "What? What?" Oh, that was bold. She said he told her he was going to slap her. She said she told him, and that'll be the last time you slap anybody. So she was an African American woman. She was. And she said that at that moment in time, she saw the ugly in him, not in appearance, but she was saying the ugly that came from his father. The way his father acted and nobody liked him, Gary had became that same way, just like his father on set. So people were not happy with Gary at this time. Now at and so that was moving on ahead to in 1985, he became very sick and his body had absorbed the kidney. So his friend mentioned from 1985 until his death, he did not have any kidneys functioning in his body. So he was on dialysis that whole time. That's a long time to be on dialysis, really. And if you work in the medical field, you know that is such a draining and strenuous process on the body. A lot of people don't really understand dialysis, but they basically are draining your blood from all through your body and draining all the toxins out of it and putting it back into your body. And that's why it's a process that you have to be hooked up to a machine. And most people who have this done, they are very tired. It takes all of their energy. They should be on strict diets. They have to worry about how much fluid they get in between the time they go to dialysis. And most of the time they have to do this 3 times a week. It's very, very exhausting and stressful to the body. And a lot of people, if they don't get a kidney transplant, or if they're not a candidate for a transplant, it's very depressing. A lot. I have a friend that passed away because she decided she just did not want to do it anymore. And I mean, sad to say, that has happened more than not. Where there's different people that I know of that told their family they were just tired and they just they couldn't do it anymore. They did it as long as they could and they just couldn't do it anymore. So, it's a sad situation. So, even though that was not Gary Coleman's case, he still was doing dialysis up until the time he passed away. So, I should say that as well. Also, Joy talked, who is the hairstylist, as I said, talked about how Gary was sick one time and they stopped the show to give him a few days to recover. And she said his daddy was mad, angry that he was not working, very angry. And he was he wanted him to work. That was her interpretation. Then they came back to Willie, the father, and he said that they were working him too much and he was mad that they didn't allow him not to work. So I don't know. Two things could be true at the same time, but I don't know who's telling the truth and who's not. So this is just their documentary. Also, they talked about how Gary was starting to get irritated because now he's a teenager, but his role is staying the same as this little boy with this catchphrase, which talking about Willis, and basically the storylines he was getting was basically repeat for this little bitty boy, but actually at this time he's a teenager. So he wanted to start doing more of things that was really happening in his life as a teenager and not as a little elementary kid. So that was difficult for him. And then fast forward, the show was canceled in 1986 because a lot of people, well, we grew up, basically. That's what happens to a lot of shows. If the show doesn't keep growing with the audience, people stop watching. I can remember I was in my teenage years, I was not checking for Different Strokes because other shows was out. There was other things that was coming on and that I was enjoying. And so Different Strokes was kind of fading by the wayside. So, and that was just for my own life. I knew that, but for other people, they may have still liked it. I don't know. But they talked about at the time when it got canceled, he had now turned 18. Okay. So now he's 18 After the show was canceled, they talked about him going into a deep depression. They talked about him being very sick, and he would not allow anyone to make him work. He didn't want to work anymore. He wanted to quit the business altogether. He had become he hated the business. He really hated the business. He had got to the point where he did not want to be in Hollywood. But of course, as a lot of child actors go through, he was typecast as well. So he couldn't get any work doing anything but being basically Arnold from Different Strokes. Because always, no matter what he tried to do, they would ask for the catchphrase. They still wanted him to be that cute, chubby cheek little boy, but now he's a man. And because of his size, they didn't treat him as such. They still wanted him to take on the role of that same little boy. So that was sad to really think about that. And then they said that his friend, basically Dion, talked about a year after the show was canceled, he called Dion in tears, basically saying he wanted to unalive himself. And so Dion stated that he went running to his side to comfort him. And then they ended up going to Hawaii and staying for a little while. In the midst of them going through this transitional time, and he was very depressed, and this is something Dion said before we get to the other part. He talked about how at different times he would hear people say things like, Gary was a jerk. He's an awful person. He's a jerk, but he pays well. And this was coming from like his, agents and managers, different people who were around him, Hollywood folks. So he stated that, that bothered him growing up, but I mean, he was a child too, and he didn't really have any stake in being able to tell him anything. So, he heard it, but he didn't think anything of it until moving forward. Gary Coleman ended up firing everyone, his whole team, including his parents. So what happened was, and they kind of skipped back and forth. So my notes are kind of going the way the documentary went. So that I'm telling you according to how they put it out there. So they were saying in 1999, they said that Dion ended up being his manager. So according to his parents, they believe to some degree Dion was the devil and basically was trying to take over his decisions, finances, and everything. That's what their viewpoint is, his parents. However, Dion was talking about how they were under investigation for 2 years. They also showed Drew Rice, which was an attorney, and he was one of the attorneys who was involved in the investigation of all of Gary Coleman's finances. And they said that he should have made about 18.2 million at that point from all the things he had been doing. But after they did the investigation, they found out that he was in the red, just horribly in the red. And so they talked about how um, they showed this ABC clip, and I took a picture of it. I meant to send it to myself so I could show you, but I'll just read it off. And it said that $18 million is what he was supposed to have as earned. His parents, which were his managers, got 20% of that. His agent got 10%. His business manager got 5%, and his lawyers was getting 7.5%. They said, and that was all before taxes. Then the other part of the pie was the taxes, savings, and other expenses. So basically, when he looked up, he was basically broke in Hollywood standards. Maybe not broke like $0 in the bank, but he was broke from having $18 million to barely anything like a regular working person. He was to that point. So they talked about how they were supposed to be putting money away in a blocked account, was like a trust account that he should get at when he turned 18. They found out that in this account there was $306,000 worth of loans on that account where they were borrowed, the parents were borrowing money from this account and never putting it back. But they were saying it was loans, but they never paid it back. Then they said that the parents had made a pension for themselves of $770,000. And that pension came out of that blocked account that was supposed to be a savings account for him once he turned 18. So can you imagine? You turn 18, you thinking, I've been making all this money all this time. You know expenses have to be paid. You got people working for you. You got your parents working for you. You know, of course, bills have to be paid. But can you imagine when he found out after this 2-year investigation that there is no money left for me? Like, that is sad. So it said that, basically Gary felt betrayed and abandoned by his parents, and he just decided at that time he was going to sue them. That's what he said. So this in 1990. He's 22, and this is his mother talking, Sue Coleman, and she said that because of his illness and his mental state, she did not feel that he would be able to handle his affairs. So they basically filed for him to get put into a conservatorship. Who does that sound like? We know of these conservatorships, quote unquote, like what Britney Spears was in. You know, plenty of people. They even talked about as of late that maybe Justin Bieber was going to be put in conservatorship. Many people in Hollywood have had to experience this. Some we may not have even heard about that, or we didn't know they were in a conservatorship, but they were. So the friend Dion basically was saying that to him, they were trying to put this conservatorship on him so that they would not be investigated any further for their bad dealings with his money. Because they also talked about how they were doing bad investments. His business manager would give them investments to do. And if you watch the documentary, his parents are older now, but they don't really seem like money conscious, savvy people and I'm just being honest. I mean, I could see myself, and that's why financial literacy is so important to teach your kids. And as adults, we still need to learn it because when you are thrust into money and you don't know how to handle money appropriately, things like this can easily happen. So that's what I was talking about when I mentioned how my views for his parents, I can kind of see how it looks bad that they did take advantage of the money, but I can also just being honest with myself, not always being able to manage my money correctly, how they could have gotten they were out of their league when it came to the money. They didn't know how to manage the money. They didn't even know what they were doing with the money. So, you know, I can kind of understand that. So right now, let me just do this. I know you may be enjoying the content and I hope you are. Please, please hit the like button. We do have a little bit more to go. I really want you to get a really a good review off of this documentary. Whether you want to watch it or not is up to you, but I hope I'm really giving you some of the depth of this story cuz it really kind of broke my heart when I thought about it. So at this moment, if you can, please hit the like button. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. I'll do more content like this. I'm getting into health and wellness. Also, I got a lot of different content that I want to share. So please, please, please come back and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, as well as look out for more content. Now, also, one thing I should say, if you do want to contribute to the channel, to help support the channel, please, you can cash out me at DD Star 73, and it's going across the screen, because right now I'm not monetized. Working towards it, but I'm not monetized as of yet. So it's all voluntary. It's up to you if that's what you want to do. But that is my cash app, $ DD Star 73. Okay, getting back to this documentary. So at this point, as I left off, the parents are wanting him to have a conservatorship. So they go to court. That was big news. I remember that. I was young, but I remember that. And they talked about how the judge basically took Gary Coleman to the back and had a private meeting with him. Talked to him about this conservatorship, had a private meeting with him. When she came back into court, she dismissed the case because she realized he is not mentally unstable. His illness that has nothing to do with what was going on with his finances. So she dismissed it. Now, I thought that was interesting because of the fact that, remember, he just had an investigation done of his finances and found out some horrible things that was happening to his money with the business manager and his parents. So that was interesting that they did want to do this conservatorship. Now, I'm not saying it, but Dion said they were probably trying not to be investigated anymore because they never changed their views on what happened. Even if they didn't intentionally spend up all the money, it could have been just bad money management, possibly. But even though they did that, they never apologized for it. And even on the documentary, they didn't basically say they were sorry. They basically was like, we did the best we knew what to do. We were signing papers and we may not have always understood what we were signing, but we did approve things and we tried to do the best for our son because that's horrible to say basically that we would misuse our son's money and blah 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 blah. That's what they said. So then 3 years later, Gary ended up taking his parents to court and his business manager, where he won a lawsuit against them. He did. Now, Dion, as I was saying before, he said he didn't feel the parents deliberately mismanaged his money, but they never did acknowledge the problem or apologize. They did not do that. So that wasn't a good look. I mean, that's your son. They never made amends for it. So then it went back to Todd Bridges. Todd said that Gary told him to never give his parents his phone number. So he was really just hurt. He was hurt. He was devastated. And basically, he could not trust his parents again after this. And he never did. Up until his untimely unaliving, he never trusted his parents again. So he said in an interview, they showed an interview of him, and he said that he was bitter and he didn't really feel like that it could ever be repaired. So then they showed a lady named Brandy Byes, which is a friend of Gary's, and she talked about the ex-wife. We come back to this ex-wife that all she wanted was money. Everybody who talked about this wife and his relationship talked about how they fought all the time over money. And even they showed a little snippet from an unaired reality show that the ex-wife and Gary Coleman was going to do together. And the basics of that conversation was about money. That's it. Well, the friend also mentions that the wife had a stack of photos of him that she wanted him to sign and sell for money. Now, I'm going to say this. She was young. She 20 some years old. He was much older. I could see her trying to get a come up. I mean, we see it every day on social media streets of these young girls doing whatever they got to do to attract these older men who they feel have the bag so they can be taken care of, so they can be living the nice life, the soft life, as people say, so that they can be flued out and get the bag, get the clothes, get the BBLs or whatever they want to get. So we can kind of see at this time period, early 2000s, how this young girl who lost her mother can be looking for the bag. I mean, just being honest. I'm not saying she was. That's just my opinion of the circumstance and the situation. And we'll go further into that. But everybody who talked about their marriage, that's basically what they said. It was very toxic. It was tumultuous, and they argued about money all the time. So then they skip ahead to this girl who met Gary Coleman in 1997. Now, this is a totally different girl. And I remember seeing this girl. Actually, I'm going to bring up one of the pictures that is on here so you can see who she is because they did. I remember seeing her before on on one of his red carpet events or something. Let me see. I'm going to pull it up. See if I can go back to that picture. She was, at the time, she was a nice looking young lady. And yes, here it is. This was at a red carpet event that they went to. And so this is just fair use because I'm pulling it off the web. I'm not copying it or anything. But I just want to show this picture of them. Let's see here. Take down my background so you can see it. So this lady here, her name is Anna. If you can see it, she was with him on the red carpet, okay? And I remember her. I remember this picture actually. So when I saw it, it was like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that. Okay. So she comes on the scene in the documentary and she talks about how she met him. She worked at one of the, now this is dating us. Everybody who knows. Remember the old school video stores where you go get your VH tapes. Later it was disc. Um to watch your movies. You rented them out. Always had to rewind it back to the front when you drop them off, or they'll charge you that little charge. I remember that so clearly. Even when once me and my husband got married, we used to go frequent those every Friday to get us a new movie to sit and watch, eat wings. Okay, it took me back. Yeah, it was nostalgia for me. But yeah, so everybody who knows. Now we got the red box in every plays, but now Redbox is not even as popular anymore because now you could just go on a streaming service or whatever to get whatever movie you want. So times have really really changed. And who all still have their VCR DVD player? I do. I got one that has both of them on there, and I have a regular just DVD player. I can't say the last time I used it, but I do still have both of them. So that's just a flashback. I bet the ones in their 20s or teens that may listen to this is like, what? What is that? You may see, if you go to your family member's house, or you may even have it at home, there's still people who have walls of VCA, VH1, uh, VHS tapes for the video player of different movies. Some of them they recorded from the TV. Yeah, all of that, all of that. That's old school for real. So anyway, she worked at one of those, like I think Blockbuster type of places. And she stated that she met him that night and she was nice. He asked her about a movie and that was that. She said after the store closed, she goes to her car and he's sitting on her car. She said like a hood ornament. And she thought that was cute. She said they ended up she went to his house and they talked for 6 hours. They became really close friends. They were in a relationship, but I thought this was very, very interesting, and I did not know this. She stated that he basically was with her for 6 years and they never had intercourse. I'll say it that way because I don't know what I'm supposed to say and not say on YouTube. So basically, she stayed with him all that time, but they never did anything but hugged and cuddled. And she said he was very sweet to her, very genuine. And then they showed a interview he had on Howard Stern, and he talked about how he was still a virgin at that time of the interview. Go figure. That was a side note. But anyway, so we getting on down. It talked about how he was sick of the catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" And I can see that because really and truly, I can just imagine how many people was making him say that every time he see somebody. And it could be annoying. Now you're 20, 30, 40 years old. You don't want to keep saying something you said at 8. I mean, really. And people, we sometimes don't really think about our favorite actors and actresses as being people. We always kind of put them in the mindset of whatever we loved seeing them on. And that makes it hard for them. So I can just imagine how difficult it was for him. So they also talked about at one time he became a security guard, and this is Anna, the friend, saying this. Well, she was his girlfriend too. She was saying that he got this security guard job, because he always wanted to be a cop, and he always wanted to play a cop or be a villain on a movie or a TV show, and he never got that chance because he was typecast. Still wanted him to be this Arnold character, and he couldn't get away from it. But then in 1998, and I remember this being on the news, he was charged with assault. So basically, the story goes a lady asks for an autograph for her son. He signs the autograph. She tells him to put something good on it. He puts something on it, but she wanted more basically. And he was like, why? It was kind of irritating him. And she got mad at him as well. So you know how we can be with the slick tongue sometimes. And she basically told him that's why you're broke. No, that's why your acting career didn't, whatever, whatever, whatever. I could just imagine what she said. But anyway, it wasn't good. Next thing he know, he socked her in the face. Yes, he did. I do not promote violence at all. And I could just imagine how, at this point, how irritating it was. He could not get away from this character. He could not be a regular person or live his life. And then, it got me to thinking, sometimes we say, oh, well, that's the life they choose. You choose to be in the public eye. So you got to take whatever comes along with it. But me, honestly, I don't know how I would feel if I was thrust into the limelight like that, and now I'm doing pretty bad when it comes to my career, but people are still disrespecting me in a way. I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, that was bad. So he basically had to go to jail. Yep, 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 yep. So he got an assault charge and he had to pay a fine and everything like that. So basically at this point, he was devastated. He was depressed. He ended up writing all these notes. So his friend was showing some of the notes he wrote, and he was reading it, and I just couldn't. So I left that alone. But if you watch the documentary, you'll see it. It's sad. It's just sad. So it said basically, he did say this in one of the notes that he felt like he was God's punching bag and that he was never going to be anything more than what he was. It's sad. It's so sad because he had such a promising career. That's so sad. So anyway, he gets to 2005. He moves to Utah, and the lady talks about how Anna is her name. Talks about how they were together. 6 years they was together, living together, everything. He goes to do this movie in Utah, and he calls her up and stated that he want to move there. He's ready to move. So she said, "Fine, okay." So they're together. So she did what she thought she should do. She packed up the house. She said it took her about 4 days. She got out there in the truck. She said she was exhausted, but when she got out the truck, lo and behold, the ex-wife, Shannon Price, came walking out with him. So let me just rewind it back just a little bit, rewind the tape, like I had a VHS. Anyway, that's a corny joke, sorry. But anyway, so remember the ex-wife talked about meeting him on this movie set. The movie set is the same movie set he was on in Utah. So this is they came back to that time period. He's on this movie set in Utah. He meet this girl. He has a girlfriend back home in California, but he meets this girl in Utah. He lets her come in uh on the set and basically tell them because she wanted to be an extra in the movie or whatever she was hoping. So she had her sights on being in entertainment too, but in a sly like way. She's in her 20s, remember? So, she was a cute little girl. So he was kind of, fond of her or whatever, and he let her in. So then she stays. They, have their first date. What we talked about earlier. He went and got her some Olive Garden. They talked and spent time together. So she ended up, when he moved to Utah, he was moving with her. But he didn't tell the girlfriend in California this. So she's thinking she packs up all the stuff from California. She's thinking she's coming to move with him. But she is moving in with them. And I forgot to mention this too. The reason why he moved to moved from California to Utah, on the movie set, he said he was excited because nobody really knew who he was. So he probably didn't have to use that catchphrase every time he saw someone. He could be free to be him, in his adulthood, because now he's good and older. He's like in his 40s. So, you know, maybe not in his 40s. Let me see. 2000. Maybe he was more like in his late 30s, going to 40s. But anyway, so he felt good there. He felt free there. So that's why he wanted to move to Utah. But she didn't have a clue that he already was living with another woman either. So she said that was no problem because, basically they was in a relationship. However, they were free to date. And I guess that was because of the intercourse part of it was not there. So whatever, people have their own arrangements of stuff. I don't understand, but that's not my business. I'm just giving y'all the review of the show. That's all I can do because I don't know. I don't understand this. But okay, getting back to the story. So anyway, um, this was crazy. He gets married in 2007. Interesting. Fine. She said they got on a helicopter, something, flew to a mountain, they got married on the mountain, whatever. The wedding little scene was weird, but you'll have to watch that for yourself. So they're talking to this ex-wife, and she's basically saying how the lady was mean to her, and they're going back and forth telling their parts of the story until eventually Anna, the friend or girlfriend from California, end up leaving because she couldn't take no more. So that was that. So he married, like I said, Shannon in 2007. They got divorced in 2008. So they only made it a year. And as I said, all the friends keep saying over and over again, they argued all the time. It was very toxic and it was all about money. Everything was about money for her. And she mentions somewhere in there that he paid 17,000 for her car, and that was so sweet of him. You know, she was kind of weird at this point. Now, at the beginning when she's talking about this stuff, I didn't sense any weirdness about it. I just took it as okay, she just reminiscing about what happened or whatever. But now by the time we get through all of these things that happened to him in his life and the depression he was in, the downward spiral he kept going into, that depression, and then you hear the ex-wife talk, it was a little creepy. So she made this statement and I had to write this down. She talked about, well, yeah, sometimes we would get in a bad argument or whatever, and yes, I did slap him, but come on, that's normal. People slap each other in their relationships. If you don't, you're lying. I was like, this girl is nuts, in my opinion. In my opinion, allegedly. I don't know the girl, but it was weird. As she started detailing about what happened the day of the ending of his life, it started getting weird. And the look on her face was cold and callous. It did not look like she ever loved this man at all. I'm so sorry. It's just the honest truth. And I keep going back to the fact that she was in her 20s and he was a lot older, maybe late 30s, early 40s. And he's with this girl who lost her mother at a young age. And he was no estranged from his own family. And I just felt like at that point, you could see that they really trauma bonded. Because remember, they got married in 2007, but they divorced in 2008, but they never left each other. So, yes, they were divorced, but they still lived in the same house together. I thought that was pretty weird. And then the friend, Brandy, was talking about how she kept pushing him to take these jobs that he didn't want to take. Because remember, he's typecast. So, all of the jobs are still the same type of characters that he didn't want to play. He's over that. He hated it. Also, remember, he's on dialysis. So even during this time, this whole time period, he's doing dialysis 3 days a week. She talked about that. The lawyer talked about how he did write up order of protections for him. He would call the lawyer, ask for order of protection. Then the lawyer's about to put the order of protection in. He called him back and say, "That's okay. We're doing good." So it was a roller coaster, toxic, narcissistic, as we've learned today in our relationship. She seemed to be a gaslighter just from my observation. I don't know the woman, but it was really weird. So then she talks about the day when everything happened. She stated that he came home from dialysis. He was tired. He was going up to the room to go to sleep. Because if you know anything about dialysis, and I hope I made a good explanation of dialysis. If you didn't know, I hope I explained it well. I also used to have a friend who did dialysis at home, and I helped her with it. It's no joke what they go through. Whether they go to the center or they try to do it at home, it's called peritoneal dialysis. I also used to work in the hospital and help with that as well. So I'm very familiar with dialysis, and it's no joke what it does to the body. But anyway, so he's coming home. He's tired. He's exhausted from this treatment. She said she has an inner ear problem. So she asked him to go downstairs to cook her some pizza rolls after he just got home from dialysis. I thought that was weird. But anyway, so she said when he went downstairs, she heard a big bang or thump or something. She called his name. He didn't respond. She come running downstairs and there's blood everywhere. Now, I'm going to stop it right there. A lot of people could think a lot of things. So a lot of people have concluded that she did something to him, like pushed him down the stairs or something. Okay. I can't say I was not there in Utah in 2010, but I don't believe her story. Can't say what happened exactly. I'm just giving you my opinion from the look on her face of her telling the story, and also because they played the 911 call that was really chilling. The 911 call, she's talking about that there's, blood everywhere. The lady is asking her to do things and she says she cannot do it. Okay? This is your husband, ex-husband at this time, but you're still here with him in the house. So you're at least friends or something. You have some type of love for him or something. That's what I would assume. But when you listen to that 911 call, there's no love there. She didn't really try to help him at all. And she explains it away about how the blood was she was anxious and she was all upset, but she didn't sound upset on that 911 call. It was like she was talking about something on TV. It was weird. Even while she's telling the story, her face is stone cold. Like, I mean, I'm just gonna tell you. I worked in the hospital on the cardiac ICU. I saw some things. I loved it. I loved getting my hands dirty. I liked helping out. I did a lot of things in the medical field. There's a lot of things that still haunt me to this day that I seen, but I was able to handle it at the time because I was trained to do so. And I was very good at fight or flight. I'm one of those kind of people, I jump into action. It used to drive my husband crazy. If I see a crash on the side of the road or whatever, especially when in that mode of time, because I go into work mode. Even now, things happen, I'm ready to work. I'm jumping in, I'm helping out or whatever. So I can understand her not knowing what to do. I don't understand how you didn't try to do. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can see this man, and these are her words. Blood is everywhere around him. And the 911 operator is telling her things to do. And she's telling the lady in the calmest voice that I ever heard. I'm upset just thinking about it. She basically said, I can't do that. Um, uh, and she didn't say it like, oh my God, oh, it's everywhere. And I don't know. She didn't sound like that. No, 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 no. The 911 call is so chilling. She was like, I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. Just come. Please help. What? Are you serious? Okay. That's totally sad. So then the paramedics get there, they working on everything. They leave with him and rush him to the hospital. Did she go? No. She went back in the house and went back to bed. So she said later she called. Later that day, she called him and he was basically like, "Yeah, I have a real bad headache and I got to go to sleep." The next day, she gets a phone call and they're telling her that she needs to come to the hospital. Now, in between this time, she's telling this, they're also flashing to the other people who was close to him, like the agent who he had in Utah, who was working with him on his last projects that he did. And she said she gave her a call and she just wasn't helpful and she wouldn't give him any information. The friend Dion, of course, he's in California. He calls. She wouldn't really talk to him either. Nobody. The parents couldn't get any information because I don't care what you say. Now, she did mention in here, and I forgot to say that she really was upset that he couldn't deal with his parents. So she never had no relationship with his parents and had no desire to get close to his parents. I don't understand that, but okay. Because I can understand him being angry and upset at his parents, but at this moment in time, that would have been the first people I called, okay? I don't understand that she never called his parents. I don't understand. So anyway, the next day, she get a phone call. It's bad. She needs to come to the hospital because she wasn't going. It don't seem like, in my opinion, the way she's talking about this. So she says she gets with her dad and they go to the hospital. When she gets to the hospital, he's on a ventilator, and she said a number of doctors telling her that basically he's not going to survive this. He's basically gone. So she had to make the decision to let him go. But I want y'all to tell me if you think this is weird or not. Okay? And then I'm gonna be done with this documentary because it's really it's just hard to I mean, I grew up with him, and just to see that that's the way his life ended, and this woman that well, you'll see. I'm pulling up the picture. I gotta find it again because I had it not too long ago. So, just the fact that nobody else is able to be there, no loved ones, because no matter what he went through with his family. Yes, he did go through some things with his parents, but this is way after everything had happened. And this is the end of his life. So his mom and dad did not deserve to come to see their child before the end of his life, before they took him off the ventilator, because the ventilator would have breathed for him as long as they had him on there. So, okay. Um, she could have gave them time to come to at least say their final goodbyes to their son, because this is their son. People have different opinions. That's how I feel about it. This is my opinion of, as I'm looking at this and reviewing it, this is my opinion. But this is interesting. And hmm, this is from CBS. And I'm just gonna show you this photo. And it's unreal. This is unreal to me. This is the last photo of him. Okay. And I just want to say trigger warning. Trigger warning. If you're not good at looking at people in the hospital or whatever, trigger warning. But hmm, this was devastating to me actually because I don't remember this. So anyway, this is like the last um let me go back and move all this stuff off of it. Let's see. So you can really see it. This is the last picture of him. And she took this picture. And she even said, well, it was a selfie. And this is from the Golden Globe, and this was on CBS News, fair use. Uh, but that's the last picture of this man. So his parents, and I'm gonna take this down because it bothered me. But his parents, at this point, that's the last picture that they were able to see of their son. And as you notice, that was in the front page of the Globe. And if you know about the Globe, I don't even know if they publish anymore. That was back in the day. This has been one of those tabloid magazines. If you know, like the Sun and different other ones that always had information about the latest gossip. Um, yeah, that was the last photo that they had of him, and it's her taking a selfie of him in that state. Really? Seriously? That broke my heart. So it ended up in a documentary that basically the girlfriend Anna, who lived with him in California, and her have been fighting over the estate that he had left, which to me, it should have went to the parents at this point, but I don't know. They probably just said, forget it, and left it alone because they didn't mention them at all as trying to um, get anything from the estate. But yeah, this ex-wife was basically saying, they were saying she's fighting over the rights of using his image and likeness and licensing him, and so she can make money for the rest of her life off of him. For real? Yeah. So if you have interest into seeing this is my review of this documentary of Gary. I may do more of these. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more reviews and documentaries. If it's something in particular you'd like me to review, um, I will, depending on the context of the content. I do want to review certain things. So, but just shoot me a DM in my IG. It's Love Seen Heard, or you can send me an email on loveseenheard@gmail.com. Um, yeah, I don't really know what else to say, but that was a sad way for him to go as a promising child star, and to see that his life ended that way. And we just never know. Like I was saying before, we can't take anything for granted. Also, the fact that, he was depressed majority of his life. It did not mention that he was had any substance abuse or anything like that. He was just devastated by the different actions that happened in his life, and he never really recovered from them. Also, the fact that he ran into this woman who really, to me, in my opinion, took advantage of him, and they trauma bonded and had a very toxic, tumultuous relationship until his untimely demise. That to this day, the police has ruled it as an accident, but his friends and family and people who know him and knew of her think otherwise. That's their opinion. That's how it goes sometimes in this world. We may never know. So, as I'm about to get out of here, and this really kind of the reason why I wanted to review this as well, it kind of goes along with my brand of being loved, seen, heard. Because if you understand Gary Coleman's life, he really wanted to be loved by everyone around him. He did have a genuine heart that was broken by many people who took advantage of his likeness, his life, and his skills. He wanted to be seen, of course, as a legitimate actor. Once Different Strokes was gone away, he wanted to be seen as a real actor, playing roles that he wanted to play, that he was passionate about. He never got that opportunity. And he wanted to be heard. When you in the documentary and they show those letters he wrote to his friend and the calls that he gave out to his friend when he was down and depressed, it really helps you to appreciate how people go through it. They're lonely. Sometimes they isolate because they're devastated by their life and they don't seem to be able to pull themselves out of it. Soon, I'm going to have some content on depression, do some more things on trauma, PTSD. I got a lot of those types of videos coming. And like I said, if you like to suggest anything, do so. If you like to contribute to the channel, my cash app is DD Star 73. If you want to donate in other ways, just hit me up on my DM or my Gmail account, and I could give you other ways to donate. If you like to, it's all voluntary. Also, just look out for more content, and to make sure that you love people around you, show love to yourself, as well as make sure that you're seen. No one should feel invisible in this life in year 2024. And make sure that you're heard in your voice. You have a unique voice. You need to spread it to the world in your own unique way. And we all can learn from each other's lives. And until the next time, I hope you take care, do some self care, take care of the ones around you, and check on the strong ones. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.